The mission of a group of paratroopers under Sergeant Eldson's command is to destroy a Nazi radio tower from a church in Germany. The enemy soldiers shoot at their plane as they approach their target. The guys who survive the explosion of their plane jump out, land in the ocean, and swim to shore. Corporal Ford and Private Ed Boyce get back together. Boyce observes Eldson being captured by a squad of Nazi soldiers and watches as they put him to death. As they advance and locate Tibbett, Chase, and Dawson, Ford forbids Boyce from speaking. When they move closer to their target, Dawson unintentionally walks on a landmine, which causes him to explode. The others continue into the woods when they notice Chloe, a French woman, passing by. As no one can see them, Ford urges them to chase after her. Boyce speaks to her in French when the men catch up to her to assure her that they have no malicious intentions. Chloe allows the men to follow her home with some reluctance. As a neighbor overhears Chloe and alerts the German soldiers to her being outside past her curfew, Chloe leads the soldiers into her community. While the American soldiers remain covert, Chloe converses with the Germans. They return to her home, where she resides with her adult brother Paul and her aunt Simone. In the attic, the men hide. Tibbett wants to play catch with Paul, but before he and Chase visit the rendezvous location, Tibbett is stoically rejected. Nazi soldiers execute a man and a woman outside after capturing them. Chloe claims that her own parents experienced this. Boyce's gunshot wound is being treated by Chloe as she describes what happened to her family. Boyce and Paul had some light playtime together. Other German soldiers show up shortly after for an inspection. Captain Warner is in charge of them. Once Chloe allows Boyce entry into her house, he must once more hide. As Boyce comes out and fights Waffner, the soldiers tie him up in the attic and prevent him from raping Chloe. Boyce is dispatched by Ford to locate the meeting place. He finds the church where the tower is, but is almost seen and is forced to hide under a truck full of the other paratroopers' corpses. Boyce finds himself inside the chapel and stumbles onto a lab where he observes a number of horrifying discoveries, including a woman's head that has been severed from her body but is still communicating to him, and a bag that contains a barely surviving thing. Boyce hides and witnesses Dr. Schmidt, the mastermind, entering. Boyce locates Rosenfeld, a fellow paratrooper, and extracts a mammoth needle from him in order to rescue him. When he and Rosenfeld escape, Boyce also brings with him a needle that is filled with some sort of experimental serum. Boyce shows Ford the serum and returns Rosenfeld to the attic. Warner is questioned about what it does, but when pressed, he remains silent. As a result, Ford begins to beat him mercilessly. Ford develops a proper strategy to get inside and knock down the tower after Boyce describes what he observed in the cathedral. Chase is given the order by Ford to go upstairs and free Warner so that he may let them inside. Chase is then attacked by Warner, who snatches his gun and starts shooting. Everyone rushes upstairs to subdue Warner, but they all fail to save Chase as they attempt to do so. Boyce takes hold of the needle and administers the serum to Chase. He swiftly regains consciousness, but very shortly he shows signs of increased vigor and confusion. The Chase begins to horribly mutate and turn violent. When he attacks his allies, Ford is forced to shoot him several times. Boyce must break Chase's head in pieces in order to permanently end his life because this does not kill Chase. According to Warner, the serum does that and was ultimately created by the Nazis to establish their rule for a millennium. Once his friends are outside, Warner then makes his escape, kidnaps Paul, and hands him over to the military. Warner is shot in the face as he exits the vehicle by Ford and his men as they fire at the Germans. Ford then determines that bringing down the tower must happen right away, placing Paul's rescue as a secondary concern. This bothers Boyce and Chloe, so they decide to save Paul first. Warner discovers Schmidt when he enters the lab again. To Schmidt's horror, Warner fills 2 needles with serum, injects himself, and quickly mutates and spirals out of control. To enter the church, the Americans utilize a German soldier that they have had strapped with explosives. Boyce, Ford, and Chloe go inside while Tibbett and Rosenfeld continue to murder soldiers outside. A soldier almost attacks Chloe in an attempt to have one of the mutants kill her. The mutant kills the soldier and chases Chloe, but she uses a flamethrower to burn him to death. Paul is eventually rescued, but the Germans continue to fire on them. Tibbett gets Paul past the firing, but he too sustains injuries. Boyce and Ford run into Schmidt and the mutant Warner in the meantime, who assault them. Schmidt tries to knife Boyce while they struggle, but Boyce ultimately succeeds in killing Schmidt. Warner then captures Ford and uses a meat hook to impale him. Boyce diverts Warner while Ford liberates himself and administers the serum to himself so he may battle Waffner. Boyce tosses a tank and fires at it, setting up an explosion, stopping Wafer before he can reach Ford. Boyce tries to assist Ford, but he stays behind to make sure that the laboratory and the tower are both destroyed. Warner is ready to attack as Ford prepares an explosive. Ford detonates the device, killing himself, Waffner, and every last mutant inside as the entire building collapses, and Boyce flees. While Chloe treats Tibbett's gunshot wound, Boyce rejoins the group outside and confirms that Ford is no longer there. A while later, Boyce reports on the mission to his superiors in London, reporting that Ford decided to blow up explosives from inside the tower to make sure it fell. He also decides to leave out all references to the lab and the research. Boyce is then informed by his boss that he and his troops will be relocated.